Hello, one and all, and welcome to the podcast we call the Fantastival with myself, Stephen Nussbaum, in the podcast where I invite my guests to come on, talk to me all about their musical taste, their memories, their experiences, and they get to collate their fantasy festivals, which I have christened Fantastivals. I hope everyone is well as they're joining us for this episode. And before we start this one, just want to give a shout out to my last guest in 172, the fabulous Rick Witter from Shed 7. What a great band they are. They deserve all the success in the world. It was a pleasure speaking to Rick, and I've completely reinvigorated myself with my love for Shed 7. So thank you to Rick, and if you haven't heard that, please go back and listen to that one, number 172. But this one is all about 173, and this week I'm delighted to introduce this lady onto the Fantastival Podcast, BBC Folk Awards finalist, the very, very talented, the one and only Amelia Coburn.
Hello.
Amelia, welcome into the podcast. I'm so happy to have you on. Big fan of yours. I'm looking forward to hearing all about your musical taste, memories, like I said, and your fantasy festival lineup, which is going to be really awesome, I'm sure. But before we talk about all that, I always like to check in with my guests to start off with, find out how they are from a mental health perspective. Really, really important. So, Amelia, how are you?
I'm good today. Yeah, I was actually not so good the other day because I got back from the Reeperbahn Festival on very little sleep. I got back and there was no food in the house. It was a Sunday and it was raining. I was like, this is a rubbish day. But then I woke up the next day feeling great again. Went to the gym, had a walk, so we're all good.
Do you find the gym to kind of work out any, I guess, stresses like in your body? Did you find the gym useful for that then?
Yeah, I love it. Like I used to love sport at school, like running, and then got to secondary and all the other girls like got really tall and grew up and got muscles and I didn't, and then I hated the PE teachers and I lost my love of exercise. So it's only as an adult that I'm starting to enjoy it again. I think a lot of people find that like they don't like it at school and then they get into it again.
Yeah, I've definitely found in the last couple of years, whether it's me getting older or more aware of my aging body, that I've definitely got back into the whole fitness routine again. So that's good to know, and obviously good for not only the body but the brain as well. So let's talk music and stop all this fitness talk because we can get easily distracted with that one. Let me take you back, Amelia, to kind of when you were younger and kind of your earliest music or memories. So what do you remember about being young and music?
I was surrounded by music, but I wasn't from a musical family, because my mum's not really into music. She enjoys it. She likes her Erasure and Will Young, but I wouldn't say I got my musical inspiration from her. But my dad and his dad before him were massively into music. And I just remember as a kid, my dad playing all sorts of music. So from the age of 2 or 3, we had this nursery rhyme cassette and I was singing nursery rhymes. Then we had Classic FM on the school run, which I think he thought it would make me really intelligent, but I don't think it did. But then his own music and taste, which is so eclectic and varied. I remember him playing like The Clash to me as a kid. And as a kid, I was like, what's this? Shy, I can't say that. What's this rubbish? But also, like, he loved like classic musicals like Oklahoma and Disney. Because he knew as a kid I loved that, so we'd have all the Disney soundtracks. So a big variation from, post-punk and a new wave to Roger and Hammerstein, I suppose. And that's my musical memories of being in the car and having the CD or tapes on.
And what age, I guess, did you get into music? And I guess what were your first records and singles when your own musical taste started to come out?
My cool answer would be the first record I bought when I got my first paycheck of £25 for a gig. And I think it was probably like the Smiths, The Queen is Dead, because most of the records my dad already had, so he wasn't that into the Smiths and I was when I was a teenager, so this was like my rebellion. I mean, he liked Big Mouth Strikes Again, but he wasn't a huge fan, so I think that was my cool answer. But before that, I think the first CD I probably listened to was one I got for Christmas, was Might Be Girls Aloud, The Promise in 2009. And it is a good album, actually. So that's my not so cool answer.
No, it holds up, absolutely. My wife went to see him a couple of weeks ago at the O2 and said it was fantastic. So there's no such thing as an uncle answer in this podcast. Everyone's got their guilty pleasures, but we just call them pleasures on this very podcast. So, Amelia, how did you get into music and how did you start playing? Like, what instruments did you get into?
When I was younger, I did a lot of musical theatre, probably from the inspiration of my dad's like soundtracks. And My first job when I was about 14 or 15 was at a cafe, and she found out I could sing. So I loved jazz, probably again from the musical theatre influence. I used to sing a lot of jazz standards that my granddad loved, and this cafe had a lot of like older clientele, so I'd sing those classic American songbook Dean Martin songs, etc. And then it was when I was about 15 or 16, I decided I'd like to accompany myself and not use backing tracks or karaoke tracks. And I begged my mum and dad for this stupid plastic ukulele that they were like, you can wait for Christmas. Christmas is coming in, 6 months? I had to wait for ages as a teenager. And when I first started finding my own style and covering those songs that I grew up with, that I didn't really choose them on purpose to be different, but it was just my favourite songs that I'd listened to. So I was playing Down in the Tube Station at Midnight by the Jam. I was playing Ghost Town by the Specials and things that other 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds weren't playing on a ukulele. And then I started going to open mics, playing them there, and realised that they were going down well. And then it was only after that I started writing songs. But it all came from those covers.
How did you find the writing process then? I guess how has it evolved into kind of the Amelia of today?
It's been a long process because I've been doing it for like 8 years, and it doesn't actually come. It comes natural to me to write because when I was a kid, I had notebooks full of poems and stupid stories. Well, not stupid, but stories that didn't make sense. So I've always liked to be creative and write. And then I stopped a little bit as I got older. As we all do, we kind of stop creating because we think that you have to be like really good or successful to do it. And then when people were like, "Oh, you should write your own songs," I actually preferred covering because I don't know. I just didn't think I could. Again, it's that thing of I'm not good enough to write. And then as I've got older and found my own style, I've realised that I just enjoy writing songs, even if other people don't like them. I'll find my own niche and audience, and I'll write what I like. And that's some of it's taken from those early inspirations of the storytelling of people like the Specials and David Bowie and Kate Bush, but then also not so much a folk influence. I think I've sort of fallen into the folk category, but the only folk I listened to growing up was maybe Leonard Cohen and Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan. But I really like Rufus Wainwright and the Divine Comedy, and quite theatrical artists that are inspired by that world of literature and film.
I was going to say, you found your niche and your style. It's a very individual style. I think it doesn't sound like many other artists out there, which I think is a compliment to you. And again, I think it's a really strong album. So I guess let's talk about the tracks then, and the songs that made the album, Between the Moon and the Milkman. How old are some of those songs, or are they all fairly recently written, or is that a kind of coalition between you from 8 years ago until I guess the point of the album coming out?
Yeah, pretty much. It was written over the course of. It was all my best or my favourite songs in the last 7 or 8 years. The oldest song is Dublin Serenade, and I think you can hear the maturity growing. Not that it's not a good song. I think it is one of the best songs, but it's not so much a song I would write now. It was a song of that time when I was really into my jazz standards or my Paul McCartney-esque ditties, like music hall style, and then the more recent songs are stuff like Seesaw and Nodding Dog, which are definitely more a bit more like hypnotic sounding and a bit spooky and a bit more not Tom Waits, but just a bit. I can't really put a genre on those songs, but they're kind of moving towards a different sound as I grow older, mature. I don't know how to say it.
So the album came out.
I don't want to say older.
More mature. I think we'll say. So the album came out earlier this year. Came out in March. Done very well, right? So it reached 55. You reached 55 in the album charts.
Yeah, I know, it's mad. And like, I didn't think I'd even get in the charts, to be honest, because I have no label. It was all done by myself and Moonbase Management, Andy, my manager, and like help from others. We've got like a little team, but none of it's funded by like any major labels, so it was all my own money. Working with Bill Ryder-Jones was the best choice ever, and he was brilliant, but it cost me a lot of money to like just go to the studios and stay in West Kirby for 3 weeks, and it was a bit of a risk on that like part. But also I did a Kickstarter, and my fans helped me fund the release, so I'd got it all recorded. Now I said, look, I want to release it on vinyl, I want to do these music videos, I want to maybe get a radio plugger so the radio can hear it and other people can hear it, because there's no good making a great album if no one hears it. So I'm really proud of how it went, and I'm just really kind of grateful that the people who supported it.
Yeah, a fantastic result. Like I said, 55. You were number 7 in the indie album breakers and 23 in the indie album chart, which is fantastic. Tell me about the week then of the album coming out. I know you must have been incredibly busy. Tell me about kind of all the activities you got up to then, and just the week and finding up and the build up to you reaching 55 in the album chart. Because I imagine that must have been a crazy, but yeah, a magical week for you.
Yeah, I remember I was at someone's wedding at the time when I found out I was in the charts, and I know it's not meant to be about me. I was like, everyone look, I'm in the charts. Definitely tried to steal the thunder, not meaning to. And yeah, that was a bit of it's weird. It was like Christmas where you had that massive build up and then the day comes and you wake up and nothing's really changed. It's just another day, but it was really exciting just to have people listen to it, because I've had those long-term fans who have known these songs for years but have never heard these versions, and I've also got the more recent fans who haven't heard any of these songs. So I just wanted to hear people's reactions. A little bit nervous in case like something went terribly wrong with the vinyl distribution, and like, I don't know, we did it wrong and they're all like, we got the wrong colours, the wrong tracks. You never know. You've always got that little worry on the first day. That was all fine though. I think the day it came out, I was actually in London because I was on it was called Loose Ends on Radio 4, and I was doing like one of the songs. That was really fun, so that kept me busy actually. And then the week of that was just promoting. I think I did a little gig at HMV in Middlesbrough actually, to like a little live in-store session, and sold some records. And as it was in Middlesbrough, you got the general public. I remember one teenage lad came in and just shouted "shite" mid-song. That was quite memorable, because you need some sort of abuse among all that adulation, don't you?
You mentioned working with Bill Ryder-Jones. I was going to ask you on that. Obviously, Bill, very established artist in his own right. So I guess, how did you find working with Bill? And I guess, what did he bring to the table with the album?
It was nice, most of all, obviously he's so talented, and having his fresh pair of ears, because he doesn't know me, he doesn't know my artistry. I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of me going, well, this song was inspired by jazz, so it's got to sound like this, whereas I just sort of gave all these songs to Bill, gave him a lot to work with. I didn't bring a band with me. Like, I think in hindsight, if I did it again, I would take the load off his shoulders and do a bit more that side. But he basically just, he had these fresh ears and made the songs what they were, and had no prior, like, there was no bias, not bias, but he was completely new to them. Dublin Serenade is more of a Pet Sounds feel, with harmonies and like almost Carpenters-esque vocals, and I was like, I've never thought of it that way, but that really works. And things like that, just having an open mind. But yeah, he's very creative, probably the most creative person I've ever worked with or come across. You could sort of physically see his brain working as he worked, and he worked really hard. And we just sit for hours in the studio, and you could tell if he had an idea to get out, he'd be like sat for ages, and then he'd have to go, I'm going for a walk, let's go to the park and do a crossword and we'll come back. But it was brilliant having him, and he basically played practically every instrument and wrote all the parts, so he was the band essentially. I was really nervous about working with him, because like you say, he's such an established and revered musician, but he's just so lovely and down to earth. Yeah, it's good.
That's brilliant. And obviously the album is still available. You can obviously stream the album or still buy it physically, right? So between The Moon and The Milkman, if anyone wants to go and buy it, we'll obviously cover your socials at the end, but obviously still available physically through retail and obviously your own website, I guess.
Yeah.
Incredible. All right. As well as the album, you're also out on the road later this year. You've got quite a few live dates coming up.
I do. I've got a headline show in London in November on the 27th at the Paper Dress Vintage in Hackney, which is a vintage shop by day, gig venue by night, and you can actually buy the clothes, I think, when you're there, so that'll be fun. And I'm hopefully getting a North East date to be announced on that week. But in January, I'm going to be on the road with a folk singer called Jim Morey, who is really good. That'll be a solo tour. And there'll be hopefully more to announce as the year goes on. Oh yeah, Manchester Folk Festival in March. So it's sort of, I'm trickling out these dates, and hoping to do a few festivals as well next summer with the band, who I've only just started working with this year, and it's been really fun. I love playing as a solo musician, but it's way more fun with the band. You got the crack, and it's a bit less pressure when you're on stage as well.
Yeah, I bet it is. Well, all tickets available for those gigs, like you said, and I look forward to seeing kind of what else comes out in terms of live dates from you. And obviously that London gig, looking forward to that. Good venue by the sounds of it. And obviously London, it being London, you never know who might be watching in the audience and who might be there. So I like to ask my guests what they're currently listening to. So in my world, like I said, I've gone back to Shed 7 since having Rick on the podcast. I'm still loving the Moonlight Parade album. And one of my favourite acts, Jesse Marlin, released an album with all different artists covering his work this week. So that's what I've been listening to. But Amelia, what are you listening to? What's on your speakers at the moment?
Oh, Oh, it's funny, like you say, you go back to old favourites sometimes. Like you'll listen to the arse of an album for years, and then you'll go, "Oh, I'm sort of sick of that," and then you come back to it. But at the moment, I'm looking right now at like what my on rotation is. I've been listening to a lot of Fiona Apple, who I've been actually only discovered a couple of years ago. Most of my music taste came from my dad, and I don't think he'd have listened to Fiona Apple. So really love her writing. It's so every album's a bit different, and she's very much has that weird theatre genre to her. I really like Fontaine's DC's new album. I'm seeing them in Dublin in December, so excited about that. And I'm listening to what else am I listening to? Yeah, pretty much Fiona Apple and Fontaine's DC at the moment.
That's a good, two good acts to be listening to, nonetheless. So, Amelia, this podcast is about you collating your fancy festival. Are you a big fan of festivals? Have you been to many?
I've been to quite a few as a performer, but I don't really get a chance to as a punter because when they're often in the summer, I don't get a chance to go to them because I'm either booked for a gig or I'm on holiday. So I used to love festivals. I mean, I love festivals, but I used to go to a lot when I was a teenager. I went to Tea in the Park a few times. But yeah, I haven't been to that many as a punter, which is a shame. I'd love to go to Glastonbury both as a performer and a punter one day.
And how do you find the festivals, I guess, as an artist? Because some artists I've spoken to really like it. Some artists I've spoken to don't like them as much because you can't really sound check and you've got to run to a very tight time schedule. How do you find festivals as an artist?
I think it depends on the festival and how well organised. A lot of festivals are notorious because as lovely as everyone is, a lot of people are just volunteering out of like the love of festivals. So not many people. You go to one stage and they're like, "Oh, you have to go to that stage," and you're on these buggies, and it can be quite a long day. And it's out of no one's fault really. That's just how festivals are. You know, you kind of shifted around from different sites, especially if it's a really big one, and you have to go with all your gear. And if the weather's bad, you just feel like I don't know. It could be difficult, and I don't maybe not for other artists, but I found festivals you don't get paid as much as you would for a gig. But I do enjoy them. I'd never turn down one, especially if it's a really fun festival and there's other artists that you want to see. But yeah, they can be difficult to do as an independent artist for sure because of the logistics of it sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that. So like I said at the top of the podcast, the aim of this very podcast is getting our guests to collate their fancy festival. So Amelia gets to choose any 5 acts, one of whom must play one of their studio albums in full, and an encore, which can be any song that all 5 acts of hers can perform together to end her fancy festival. So for any first-time listeners, it's very simple. 5 acts, 5 time slots. So like I said in the last episode, I was delighted to be joined by Rick from Shed 7, and he collated his Are You Experience Festival. In his opening slot, he picked Shirley Bassey, that I wasn't expecting, but it was a great choice nonetheless. In his super second slot, he picked the Lars and had them play their debut album, The Lars, in full. For his Midway Madness act, he picked the Pogues. Pre-headliners, he picked the Ronettes and had the Ramones come out to perform Baby I Love You with them. And for his headline act, he picked Elvis Presley, and slightly cheated by having Jimi Hendrix come out with Elvis as well. And for his encore, he had all those acts play The Air That I Breathe by the Hollies to end his fantasy festival. So a wonderful festival, and again thank you to Rick. So before we talk about your acts then, Amelia, before we get to collate your fantasy festival, we need to give it a name and a venue. So Amelia, what are you going to call your fantasy festival?
This was the hardest part, I think. I've probably not really done as much thought into the title as I should have, but I have called it Eclectica.
Oh, I like it. Eclectica. All right, so we've got Eclectica, and you can take us anywhere in the world. You can keep it local to Middlesbrough. You can go as far away as what you want, big, small. The choice is yours, Amelia. So where are you going to host your fantasy festival?
It's going to be at the park that I live across from. I thought it has to be somewhere in Teesside. And it's not necessarily a music venue, Preston Park, but I imagine we could get a stage there. And it's my favourite park to walk around. Like on an evening, I always do a walk around the lake, or the river, sorry. Or, you know, just nice. It's just nice to be outdoors there. And I think I'd love to be able to just walk across the road to the festival and come home. I don't have to drive anywhere, so it's got to be there.
Great shout. All right, we haven't been there before, but we're going to Preston Park in Teesside. So we've got a name and our venue. And before we move on to the 5 acts who make it, every week I'm aware of how difficult the choice is of getting all your acts down to just 5. So any honourable mentions for acts who you love but just aren't going to make it into your fantasy festival lineup?
Yeah, there was quite a few. I mean, when I was doing my lineup, I think the ones that didn't make it were the ones that I could potentially still go and see. I sort of gave my choices finally the ones that like they are really the fantasy, like there's no way I'm ever going to get to see them. So I really would have loved to put ABBA in there, but I thought, well, I can go to the London show. That's not really them, I know, but I could really have that experience. But I think they'd be great live to have like a little disco set, because I really love like later ABBA, sort of like Voulez-Vous, Beach Boys, Kate Bush, Billy Joel, and the Sundays. I was going to have the Sundays play reading arithmetic, but I just thought, it's just they're not going to fit on the bill. Not this year.
All right, some big and some great acts missing out on your 5 in. So I guess let's go through the ones who do make it in. So time for your opening act. 2 o'clock, Eclectica is kicking off, Amelia. So who are you going to have open your fantasy festival?
So it's going to be like a nice Sunday in the park, and to set us all off for a nice relaxing start, we're going to have Simon and Garfunkel play their album Bridge Over Troubled Water in.
Oh, great show. All right, Simon and Garfunkel. So why are you having them, and that album in particular, in to open your fantasy festival, Amelia?
I mean, to be honest, like of all the artists, I knew I needed one of them to play an album. I was trying to think which one, and I think that's one of my favourite albums ever. It reminds me of being in my first year at uni. My friend got me that record and I just absolutely love it. And there's not really a bad song on the record, but I just think they're not underrated because they're absolutely huge, but I don't think enough people talk about them as like such a big influence in the world of writing and music, because like their songs are actually, I mean, Paul Simon is a writer and Art Garfunkel's voice, I just think together they're pretty much perfect, I'd say, on the level of like Lennon and McCartney. And they're so influential for me in terms of their harmonies and their songcraft. So yeah, I just thought I'd just love to hear them live. The album, I've heard like live albums of them, but I imagine just seeing them like play together. So that's
a great show. Unbelievably, actually, after 173 episodes, this is the first time Simon and Garfunkel have ever been chosen on the Fantastival Podcast.
Like, they're not underrated, but they don't seem to be talked about enough. So, like, yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe Paul Simon could do a few solo bits. I'm not too bothered about Art Garfunkel, so maybe he could do Bright Eyes. But I just want that. Obviously, they're doing the album. That's what I was thinking. Like, I'm not too bothered about the solo bits. If they play that album in full, I'd be very happy. It's got all my favourite songs on.
Yeah, great shout. All right, Simon and Garfunkel are opening your fantasy festival. They're going to give us an hour and play Bridge Over Troubled Water. That takes us to 3 o'clock. We'll take a nice half-hour break, and it'll be time to recommence at 3:30. So, Amelia, great first act. Who are you going to have as your super second?
The reason it's called Eclectica is because we've gone from one extreme to the other. We're going to have Joy Division come after Simon and Garfunkel for a bit more of a punky set.
Great shout. So why Joy Division for you, and why do they make your fantasy festival lineup?
I just know that I'll never be. I've seen New Order, I've seen Peter Hook play Unknown Pleasures and Closer in full before when I was a teenager, and he actually threw his t-shirt at me because I was at the front, and I've still got them sweaty little Peter Hook t-shirts.
Oh wow, wicked.
My dad took me to those gigs. They probably one of my first like proper gigs. But I'll never be able to experience Ian Curtis, of course, and like I just think I would love to have seen Joy Division live. It's like, again, for me, that is, people wouldn't hear it, I suppose, in my music, but I am really inspired. I think Ian Curtis, again, is a great storyteller with stuff like She's Lost Control. But just I think it'd be a great live set. And yes, sadly, because I can't see them, they have to be my fantasy festival. And I'd bring my dad along because he got me into Joy Division. He's actually got my Joy Division t-shirt, because when he goes to see the tribute band, he's like, can I have your t-shirt? It's dead tight on him. But I thought I could repay my dad for taking me to see Hooky as a kid. And I'll take him to see Joy Division at Eclectic.
I think if one person's getting a VIP pass into Eclectica, I think your dad deserves a VIP pass from what I've heard about him. So, amazing. All right, Joy Division are your super seconds. Second time they've been picked for the podcast, so not too often, but a great shout. They're going to play, like I said, from 3:30 till 4:30. We'll take another half-hour break, and that'll take us through to 5 o'clock, and it'll be time for your Midway Madness act, Amelia. So who are you going to have follow Joy Division and be your Midway Madness act?
I'm going to have David Bowie play. Again, someone I wish I could have seen. And I was going to get him to play Hunky Dory in full, but then I thought, we'd miss out on like his Aladdin Sane like era, his Ziggy Stardust. And I'd love to see what costumes he'd come out in, what he'd do. I would just leave it up to him, as long as he doesn't play like really, really early stuff and really, really late stuff. Just the hits. Can we have the hits, please, Bowie?
Yeah, that's a fair shout. I mean, David Bowie's one of the most picked artists on the podcast. I guess it comes as no surprise. 21st time David Bowie has been picked. So we're just going to have a hit set, right? So you're not interested in any era. Let's just let him do what he wants and any costumes that you want.
Yeah, I mean, he can play. I mean, I always laugh, when you see a band that you really love and they're like, "Oh, we're going to play our new stuff," and you're like, because of course bands are always going to play new stuff. Like, I would do the same, but you want to hear the songs that are nostalgic to you and the ones that you love. And for me, that is, I always end up Saturn Life on Mars. It's my favourite song in the whole world, I think. But I love that kind of era from, like Hunky Dory and Ziggy Stardust and Spiders from Mars. That kind of, if he could choose a lot of them and then throw in a few other ones, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, he'll do that for you. Your fantasy festival, so we've got no problem with that. So David Bowie is your Midway Madness act. He's going to play from 5 till 6. Again, we'll take a half-hour break, and that will take us down to our pre-headline act. We're going to get an hour and a half. So an amazing first 3 acts in your fantasy festival, Amelia. But who's going to be your pre-headliner?
We're going to have Velvet Underground and maybe Nico, if she's available as well, to do a few of her bits with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great shout on the Velvet Underground. So why Velvet Underground, your pre-headline act?
I was just thinking, like, because it was about my favourite bands as well, but I was thinking, who would I really want to see live? And I would just love to see, like, Lou Reed screeching out rock and roll, or, like, I'm waiting for the man, like, or as well, if you could do some solo bits like Vicious and Satellite of Love, that would be ideal. If you could just do a few of his solo bits too. But yeah, I would love to hear like Venus in Furs live. That would be absolutely amazing. And I think they've just got a great like back catalogue of songs to play. So they'd be a great like pre-headline act. I think I couldn't see a reason not to have Velvet Underground at my festival, so I had to put them in.
Great shout. All right, 6th time they've been chosen. They are going to be your pre-headline act. They're going to give us an hour and a half, which is going to be amazing. 1.5 hour break after they finish, and that'll take us to 8:30, and it'll be time for your headliner. So we've talked about loads of great acts so far, Amelia. There's one more act to finish off your fantasy festival who are going to get 2.5 hours. So who are going to headline Eclectica?
We're going to have a full big band set of Frank Sinatra hits.
Oh wow, that's a great shout. All right, Frank Sinatra, the man, is coming to Teesside, unbelievably, to headline your fantasy. I mean, already the imagery in my head is fantastic of just Frank Sinatra in Teesside. So why is he going to be your headliner in, Amelia? What is he going to bring to Eclectica?
I think I've always loved jazz, he's probably not my favourite jazz singer by any means, but I think for a live set to finish off the night, who doesn't want to just like sing the sun's going down over the river, you've got a pint in hand and Frank Sinatra's crooning My Way and Fly Me to the Moon. Like, what could be better than that? It's like, as well, it's quite eclectic. Like, I don't know everyone who would love both Joy Division and Simon & Garfunkel, but I feel like everyone loves at least one Frank Sinatra song. You can't go wrong. And I think it reminds me of my granddad, because before he passed away when I was younger, I had a Frank Sinatra record on. And he came upstairs and he used to do ballroom dancing, and we were ballroom dancing in my room to one of them. I think it might have been Love is the Tender Trap. So I'd get Frank to do that one as well. But I think I just got a lot of, fond memories of those songs growing up and as an adult. And they're just quite sing-alongy when you think about it. And I just think, imagine the orchestra as well, like the full-on brass section. So that's why Frank Sinatra would finish off the night. That's
a great show, right? Second time Frank Sinatra's been picked. Only ever picked once before, and he was picked by Tommy from Space back in episode 70. Really? Yeah, so you and Tommy now linked by the Fantastival and having Frank Sinatra play. All right, Frank Sinatra, there's going to be an unbelievable 2.5 hours, and at 11 o'clock he's going to stop the band and bring out Velvet Underground, David Bowie, Joy Division, and Simon and Garfunkel all on his stage in Teesside in this park. I mean, that's an incredible lineup you've got here stage. They're all looking at you, Amelia, and going, right, we've got one more song to play. What are you going to have us play? So, Amelia, what are you going to have your fantasy festival lineup play?
I took this way too seriously, I had like a whole spreadsheet. I was thinking, well, we can't have Joy Division singing that. Like, Simon and Garfunkel wouldn't do that. And I settled on probably one of my favourite songs. If I ever went on Desert Island Discs, this would be one of my discs. And it's LA Woman by The Doors. And I think it's a good 7 or 8 minutes. There's enough time for like people to do solos. I would love nothing more than for Lou Reed and Ian Curtis to start like yowling, Mr. Mojo Rising. And that's one of the songs that my dad used to play when I was 6 in the car. And I was like, Dad, turn it off. I don't like it. Mr. Mojo Rising. Now it's like my favourite ever song. And again, Frank Sinatra, like LA Woman. I think altogether, I feel like all the bands could really pull something out the bag for that.
I think that'd be incredible. I've just got an image of Sinatra going through it as well. I think that'd be amazing. I think that'd be
Exactly,
incredible.
yeah. Now that one could do like some guitar solos and like harmonizing over it. I just think actually, the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, this needs to happen. Can someone do an AI version of this? Because I'd love to hear it.
That's incredible. All right, so let's lock your fantasy festival and summarise it. So we've got Eclectica taking place at Preston Park in Teesside. Your open acts are going to be Simon and Garfunkel, who are going to play Bridge Over Troubled Water in full. Super Seconds, we've got Joy Division. Midway Madness, we've got David Bowie. Pre-headlining, we've got Velvet Underground. And your headliner is going to be Frank Sinatra. And for your encore, they're all going to play LA Woman. Amelia, that sounds amazing to me. Are you happy to lock that one into the Fantastival Vaults?
I think, yeah, I'm gonna have to be. Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's go
I
for
probably
it.
should find tomorrow, but
That's incredible. So some new acts and some established acts in there in terms of the Fantastival lineup. All right. So before we depart this podcast and leave, Amelia, you've obviously mentioned, I guess, kind of upcoming gigs, but I guess what the rest of 2024 and maybe 2025 beyond look like for you? So obviously you mentioned the gigs, but what else have you got planned, or what else would you like to happen, I guess, in the forthcoming
so
months?
this year I've been really lucky that I was awarded the Tees Valley Artist of the Year award. There was 5 of us, and we've all been given like a year's minimum wage and a development budget. So I basically can do music full time and focus on writing and not have to worry about like, oh, where's the money going to come from? So it's opened up a lot of creative time and space. So this year I'm going to be keeping gigging, but the main focus is writing my second album because I can't take another 7 years to write it. So I've been working on that, and it's very much like at the moment, quite like Wickerman inspired, a bit folk horror, a bit noir, gothic, and I'm quite liking where it's going. So we'll see. It's a bit more concepty, I think, and I might lose fans, but hopefully I'll gain the ones. If I did lose any, I don't think I would, but it might be different from the first record. That's just
Amazing. That sounds incredible. I look very much forward to hearing that whenever that is ready and recorded. So we mentioned earlier, but how do people find you on social media, Amelia, or is there a website to go to? What's the best place if anyone wants to keep up to date with all the goings on in your world?
probably not Twitter. I do have Twitter, but I've actually put in the bio now, like not very active on here. Probably Instagram and Facebook is Amelia Coburn. I have a website as well and a mailing list, which is always good because again, socials aren't always the best for me. So if you want to keep up with what I'm doing, I do email a mailing list very sporadically, and I don't sell anyone's deals onto Russian oligarchs or any. So you can join that. I have a Patreon too, which is a bit more of like behind the scenes and demos. But yeah. I was going to say you could find me anywhere on the internet, but that sounds a bit strange. So just type it up Amelia Coburn on social media and you'll find my pages.
Amazing. All right, so that is it. And thanks to everyone for listening to the 173rd episode of the Fantastival Podcast. If you've enjoyed this, please subscribe and give the Fantastival Podcast a review on iTunes. You can also give us a follow on Spotfiy, which is really important, actually. You can also comment on the show and rate the show as well. And don't forget to recommend this to your families and your friends. Amelia's mentioned kind of her activity on social. We use Twitter quite a lot on this podcast, so if you don't follow us, please do. You can find us at Fantastival P. You can also find the podcast on TikTok, and you can also email the podcast at fantastivalpodcast@outlook.com. Unfortunately, we don't play music on this podcast, but I'll get some tracks from Amelia of her chosen acts. We'll make a nice little Spotify playlist that you'll be able to scroll down in the episode description and find a link there and really bring this fantasy festival to life. So Amelia, I've really enjoyed talking to you. You've been a great guest, an amazing lineup, and I found, again, your album to be superb. Really enjoyed listening to that. I mean, how have you found coming on the podcast and collating your very own fantasy festival?
I really enjoyed it, and like I said, I actually took it very seriously. So I spent a good 45 minutes this morning writing all my things down and being like, hey, could I do that? I really enjoyed it, and I only wish that this fantasy festival could be a reality.
Yeah, me too. Sounds incredible. Well, best of luck for the future. Like I said, thanks again for coming on. You've been a wonderful guest, and I'll be back next week with episode number 174. So please make sure to join me for that one. But until then, stay safe, my Fantastival friends. Please continue to spread the word, and that word is Fantastival. Thanks for listening.